Boy, oh boy, what's been happening in the world this weekend? Nothing? No, big question. Are you ready to head to the polls? It's true. Federal election, it's around the corner because, and in fact, today is going to be the first full day of campaigning after Justin Trudeau triggered a snap election. So Canadians, Canada, we now have just over a month to weigh each party's pitches to carry us through this pandemic and hopefully out on the other side of it sometime soon. So first question we're going to start with is, are you looking forward to this?
Oh, Mel, that is the question. At first, I was like, an election, okay, whatever. It almost didn't register because, and I'm sure a lot of Canadians feel this way, like I got enough going on in my life, like personal stuff, drama to sort of distract me from, okay, yes, things that will determine our nation's future. But then over the weekend, there were moments where I was actually getting a little excited because, guys, this is going to be theater. And we have a front row seat. I was listening to the radio and this pundit brought up, do you remember that Maclean's cover from 2019? It was sort of infamous now. And it was a whole bunch of conservative leaders dressed in suits. And it said the resistance in big letters and how they were forming a new alliance to fight the carbon tax. Doesn't that seem like so long ago? And doesn't it feel like almost quaint? I mean, since then, global pandemic, the world is either on fire or being flooded. Statues are being toppled. Unmarked Indigenous graves are being found. We are having a racial reckoning. It just seems like this is a moment where we have to reckon with the past and figure out our future. So the idea of upcoming debates are really exciting to me. This is going to be must-watch TV, and I'm looking forward to actually learning what these parties' actual positions are.
It's interesting, though, because when you talk about much-watch TV in theater, typically, if we're using that analogy, the people on stage are stars. And I feel like the five choices that Canadians have. I mean, I can't be the only one who feels a little apathetic or at least not that interested. I mean, we're not talking, I don't know if we're talking about stars here or even supporting characters. Some people might describe the theater offerings here as walk-on extras.
Yeah, this question of are you looking forward to it? I was just like, there's lots of things in life I look forward to. I look forward to eventually taking a vacation again one day. I look forward to not stressing about my child going into school. I look forward to all kinds of career things. I do not look forward to elections, I don't think, ever. They're not fun. This is not a fun time of life. But I will say that I feel like this maybe is a really bad timing, of all of them. I'm going to go first to Linda on Facebook, who says, well, nothing is getting through the legislature right now, and there is other business that needs to be conducted. There needs to be a consensus on consequences of the vaccines, and without a majority, it's proven to be impossible. And Linda, I think that's a really, really good point, and you're right. I wish that had been more hammered home, that idea that certain things aren't able to get done because we are in this minority status. But I wonder if they are running the risk of not getting that majority status, again, because of the timing. So, they've shown in polls that the Liberal Party is actually going down. And in part, they call this the recoil effect. So people, I think, are feeling, rightly so, overwhelmed with the pandemic, many people are re-entering the workforce, going back to work in the fall. Of course, the nightmare that is the school system. So parents and regular people have a lot on their plate right now. So do we want to, in such a short, truncated amount of time, be worried about figuring out who our representatives are and what the best, getting up to speed on making this big decision? I don't think a lot of Canadians want this.
It's funny because I think you're right. There have been many polls that shown that Canadians are like, oh my gosh, right now. And the flip side of that, because I think a lot of us feel that way, there's a lot going on right now. I think personally in people's lives outside of this country, it feels like there's a lot going on. But the flip side is really understanding that even though we are still in the heart of this pandemic, hopefully we're going to be seeing through on the other side the recovery. And so for me, the question then becomes, who is the party to lead us out of this, to lead us into a strong recovery? And is this going to be the party, whether it's going to be Justin Trudeau and the Liberals continuing what they have done versus like, do you want another party coming in? Like, are you cool with that then? Like, the alternative is somebody has to lead this country. And so even though the election was called and it was snap, and a lot of people were saying, oh, this is a power grab, for me, it is consistency as a citizen that who do I think is going to best continue to push us through this pandemic and then the recovery on the other side, which leads us to the question, what do you think will be the top issues? I think we're kind of over it now. Like, are we going to have election or not? Guess what? We're having one. So, ladies, what do you think the issues are going to be for Canadians if they actually get off their tushes and vote?
I think one of the
I got a social media comment, and I'm going to pull it up. But in the meantime, I just want to mention quickly, don't you guys find it a little redundant? People keep asking Trudeau, like, don't you think this is opportunistic? Don't you think you're doing this just because you want a majority? It's like, well, duh. Yeah, of course that's why he's doing it. This is called politics. And also with your social media comment, Cynthia, the idea that, he wants the majority because he's not getting stuff done. Well, then name some names, Trudeau. Like, admit that up front and tell me.
I agree.
Who's not doing what? Show me the receipts.
Yeah.
But sorry, guys, I just got really worked up there. Tammy on Facebook says she's looking forward to the election and think the issue that will set them apart is what they think the role of government is in our daily lives. Pandemic aid and healthcare will be top billed. However, as I'm choking on wildfire smoke, I'd like to also see leadership on climate issues. Yes, Tammy, yes.
That's a huge one. I can't ignore the fact that in terms of issues, I think that vaccines, vaccine passports, the continuation of the vaccination program across this country, I think those are going to be front and center. It's funny that I think as Canadians sometimes, at least my memory is sometimes short. You remember the early days of the pandemic when we were yelling, where are our vaccines? America is drowning in vaccine. Where are ours? And we were really angry with the federal government. Today, we are one of the top vaccinated countries in the entire world, sitting on over 20 million doses that we are ready to push. If, for example, something like a booster shot happens, we're not in the same place that we were even 6 or 9 months ago. So how are people's memories going to factor from yesterday to today? There was CERB. There was trying to put out money to keep our economy and our people afloat. Like, the question will be, are you voting based on how it was handled before? Are you voting based on how the government is handling this pandemic today? Because I would say for people who were worried, is it safe to even go to the polling station and vote? And it's like, largely because of the federal government's vaccination program, it is safe enough because we have so much vaccine, right?
That was
there
such
is
a ridiculous thing for them to for people to be bringing up, like, oh, it's not safe. Why would Justin Trudeau do this? I mean, shut up, because it's always you've always been able to do remote voting. Again, this is a person who's not excited about this, but you could always do mail in, like recently, and you can also do advance polling. There's many times I think the last bunch of elections, I've always done advance because there's hardly anyone there. And if you are vaccinated again and you are masked, you are really quite safe. What bugs me, though, is this is a government that has talked a lot about environmental issues, and there does seem to be a lot of waste coming up. They are ordering in tons of masks, and the pencils that they're using, I was reading last night, are going to be single-use only. Like, you're getting on these tons of pencils. I mean, again, how many people get COVID through material items? Like, I think that's been kind of thrown out the window.
It's airborne, we know now.
Oh my gosh, that bugged me. And it seems extremely wasteful.
Yeah, I just want to flag also, I mean, it's in the news, Afghanistan. This might be a curveball that this federal government didn't see coming. And anybody who's been watching the news knows the horrific situation with the Taliban now controlling essentially the entire country. And I think a curveball issue here is going to be, how do we get people who have been largely supportive of the Canadian activity in Afghanistan over 20 years out of Kabul and other areas? And I'm talking about interpreters, security staff, drivers, those who actually helped on the ground our Canadian troops stay safe and fight the Taliban. And we have so many heart-wrenching reports of people who are literally stuck and fearing for their lives. And this is going to be one of those issues. This is only a 36-day campaign. I think we're now down to officially 35 days. This is an issue that somebody might not have seen coming. The world didn't see the Taliban coming this way. So So this is, for me, also an issue. Plus Indigenous rights. Let's continue to yell it from the rooftops. The last time this government had a majority, what was accomplished? I think everybody's looking, going,
There are a lot of promises.
let's go.
Yeah.
That's and what you're talking about with Afghanistan is on the foreign policy front. What we're talking about for Indigenous rights is on the domestic policy front, and we also have to consider domestically the idea of Western alienation. This was a concept that came up after the last federal election, where it was very clear that there was a divide in this nation between Western provinces and people in the Eastern provinces. Has that divide been further entrenched over the last 3 years? With the pandemic in particular, if we're talking, for example, about environmental issues, there are certain provinces that have been in the past not entirely supportive of environmental decisions. Also on a deeper layer in terms of party influence in certain provinces. I'm thinking about Alberta. Traditionally, Alberta has not been super receptive to the NDP. The Green Party is almost non-existent in Alberta. Will they be able to make inroads during this election? In British Columbia, you do have more of an NDP presence, but at the same time, there is that divide. There is that attitude that's been long festering, but has continued and has been brought up over the last few years, that the West doesn't feel like the people in the East know what they want. This is a serious problem in our country. We've seen it play out in the U.S. with the southern states and the more, quote, democratic states. Is the same thing really coming and bubbling up and exploding onto the surface in our country? I wonder if this election is really going to expose those wounds, and how, I don't know, what our country is going to be like in the aftermath with all that.